It's killing me. Where I've been doing my best to keep quiet. Ask where I've been doing my best to keep quiet. So long. Every day. Saw your face. Be the same every day. It's killing me. Every second, every day. Run that back. Let's run that back. Chat. So started a new job. Today was my first day.
Welcome, Cat God Sleeps.
Oh God. And it feels good. It feels good. The people are nice, friendly. So we love that. Like I said, one of my friends works there. Excited to get to work with him. Excited to get to build a relationship, strengthen it. It's a good guy. I mean, I'm trying to be more intentional about surrounding myself with good people, surrounding myself with people I admire. Being more intentional about my friendships, not just like, oh, we like enjoy the same things, but like, you know, we enjoy some things, but above that, we have the same values. We care about fighting for the same things. We find the same things important in life. So trying to be more intentional about building those friendships and developing those relationships. And we're happy about it. I'm happy about it. So I'm gonna play New World today. Let's see. Let me look at my news feed. Give us some things to talk about. Because the world refuses. Not the world. That's not true. The powerful refuse to let go of their foot on our neck. What's up, XX? The powerful refuse to release their foot off our necks. So every day you look at the news, there's some other atrocity happening. And I'm not saying that to be pessimistic, to be bleak, to be nihilistic. You know, we don't, and I was in this place for a long time, but we don't need to look at all the bad things in the world and shy away from it and turn a blind eye. We can face it and say, hey, we don't like this and we want it to be different. I think to get to that point, it's difficult. And I don't say that we don't need to shy away from it to, you know, down people or discourage people, but rather to say that we got to build the skills to be able to face it, because these things are hard, they are difficult, they are scary, they are sad. And you can't simply face the scary, difficult, sad things if you haven't built the skills to be able to do that, if you haven't developed the courage to be able to do that, to be able to withstand those things. So the night's dark and full of terrors.
Welcome, Islander.
And the horrors persist. But so do we, chat. So do we. And the only way we can continue to persist is if we continue to build ourselves up. If we continue to improve. We continue to cultivate courage. Continue to cultivate compassion. Continue to cultivate curiosity. Continue to cultivate candor. the world isn't going to get any less scary. We get better at facing it. And the more we can face it, the less scary it feels. The more we can handle it. And that's what it comes down to. That's the secret. The alternative is to see the world in the awful state that it's in and to be overwhelmed by it and to shrink into our shell and to miss out on life, to miss out on the beauty that life can be. Today I'm standing at the train station, and my commute reminded me of the commute I had in high school, and so I started to reminisce on where I was mentally those days, and the things that weighed on my mind, the things that bothered me, the things that sort of kept me up at night. And a lot of it was looking for purpose in life. A lot of it was trying to find a reason to keep doing this thing. And I think at that point, the answer, I was looking for some kind of profound answer, some kind of big reason to make it all worth it. And I've moved away from that. I don't need a big, grand purpose to enjoy life. I can enjoy life simply because of what it is. Because when I go outside and I see the sunshine, it is incredibly beautiful. And even the nighttime has its own beauty. And that is enough. That is enough. And I don't need to close my eyes to the horrors to appreciate that. I can build myself up to be able to withstand those horrors and protect others from them. And there's an immense amount of reward in that. And we can all do that. And if we all do that, we make the world a better place for ourselves and for others. That is truth. That is the reality of the situation. We are the ones who create the world as it is. Human beings are the most powerful force other than nature on this planet. Sometimes what we do surpasses nature itself. So don't let anyone tell you that these issues in human society are out of your hands. They're too big. They're not. They're not. They're completely within our hands and within our control. Together, not alone, but together, we can change them. And to do that, we need to come together, but we also need to build ourselves up internally so we have the capacity to face these things.
Ah, it's good to see you. Almost called you comrade. I'm glad you made it safely. It seems this disaster has spread all across Windsworth. What did you find in the Iron Keep? A correspondence from Medea. Let me see. God's blood, she's not happy. So
today we're going to talk about the multipolar world. And I don't want anyone to think I'm some expert in anything. I read a little bit of news. I have small background in studying political science and social institutions, and I read some books and listen to some people who read a lot more books talk about their opinions. And then I challenge their opinions. I challenge my opinions. I challenge my thoughts on things. I continue to scrutinize them and attack them. And I let go of thoughts and opinions and beliefs I no longer find to hold water, as I think we should all do. Okay. So, some of you might have heard in the news or heard this concept. There's this concept of a multipolar world. What does that mean? What does a multipolar world mean? Before we talk about a multipolar world, let's first discuss what a polar world means.
Welcome, Gunia.
When we talk about a polar world and a multipolar world, we're talking about a global power structure in which one, in the case of a polar world, one superpower has dominant control. This is the case in the current state, and that is ever waning, which is to say it's getting less and less. America right now stands as the waning sole superpower.
All right, slow the pot.
This situation is rapidly changing
Welcome, Stevie
as
B.
other nations gain greater economic and military power. Economic, military, and political power, right? All those things are kind of synonymous. We're shifting slowly into what's called a multipolar world, where countries like China and regions like the global south are gaining more power economically, militarily, and thus politically. What does this mean for humanity? Because I think that's, if we're being honest and being serious, we should always think of it from that perspective. What does it mean for humanity? It means the world is getting more equal, and that's a good thing. Don't let anyone convince you that that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. You shouldn't want to lord over other people. It is an insecure person that wishes to dominate others. We don't need to lord over other people, be it as a nation or an individual. So we're moving into a multipolar world. Now, if you are someone, or if you're a country, if you're a nation who's been in a polar environment and you have found yourself at the top of that structure, that's a good situation for you. You don't want that to change, right? It's like being the biggest kid on the playground. Well, I control everything here. Everything I say goes, and I get the majority of the spoils. That's a good situation, but it's a tenuous situation, which is to say it's susceptible to change. And so you need to keep doing things. You need to keep active to keep that situation to continue to be the case. In the case of the US, we do military operations and economic warfare all across the world. Examples. Well, look at every war the US has waged. I know we were raised, and this is the case in every nation, with very few exceptions. And when I say these things, I don't want people to think I'm picking on the US. I don't hate the US. I hate this narrative of, if you speak clearly about something, that means you hate it. You don't have to hate something to critique it. We've been raised to think that the US is this superhero cop who's policing the world for the greater good. This isn't the case. Governments don't act from an altruistic place. Governments act from a place of self-interest. They're not thinking what's best for the world. They're thinking what's best for the ruling powers in my borders, because those are the ones that control the government. The ruling group, the ruling economic group controls the government. The government is of the ruling economic group in every country. This has been the case since time immemorial. It is the case now. Look at any country in human history. The ruling economic powers control said country. Okay. As the world becomes more multipolar, the US dominance begins to wane. We find ourselves in a situation where we have to make a decision. Do we fight to tighten our grip on this situation that is ever waning, or do we accept the change in situation and work with the rest of the world to ensure a peaceful transition of power? Well, sadly, the answer that we have chosen, and when I say we, I don't mean the American people and that we have democratically come to this decision, far from it. The ruling powers, the ruling economic body in America has chosen the most insane choice in such a situation, which is we are going to try and dominate any and everyone to maintain this position, which is impossible to retain. It's impossible economically to do so, and historically, as no nation has done so. There have been some nations that's had a really good run, thousands of years. America hasn't even come close to thousands of years, but they've all fallen from grace because it's impossible to uphold such a situation forever. Nothing is forever. We know this as human beings. What America does to maintain its power is economic warfare and typical warfare. So we see this in things like our attacks on Venezuela. We've heard in the media that Venezuela is this place that's harboring these warlords and drug dealers, and they're waging a war on America and they're killing tons of Americans. And so we have to go in there and take down the rulers of that country, the political rulers of that country, to save the American people and to end the scourge of the Venezuelan drug lords. Of course, this is a pretext, a fabricated one. We don't actually care about how drugs are impacting the American people. If we did, the opioid crisis never would have happened. And the pharmaceutical industry and the billionaire family that profited off of it would have not have been able to get away with it. And countless Americans wouldn't have had to lose their lives. Countless people wouldn't have had to lose their lives. So it's not the case that we care so much about the drugs that we attack Venezuela the way we're doing. And so it begs the question, well, what is the reason that we're doing this? Power and global dominance. Venezuela has a ton of natural resources, and we want access to these resources. When one is paying close attention, this becomes evident. The opposition leader, Machado, I believe is her name, who recently won the Nobel Peace Prize, talks about opening Venezuela's borders. And I don't want to drop all. Talks about opening Venezuela's borders to the free market and how this would be great for the Venezuelan economy. And people in the current administration who are simply a representation of the American ruling class want this. They greatly support it. Why would they? Well, it's a good situation for the American ruling class that Venezuela opens its markets. Why? Currently, the ruling economic power is America. And so if we're able to go into a place with vast economic resources, our companies and enterprises are able to grow and expand. And given our capitalistic economic model of infinite growth, we need new markets. We constantly need new markets. And that's been the reason we've waged every single war ever, is to have more space for our economy to grow, to feed the capitalist machine, to feed the infinite growth machine. Venezuela would be another place that we can sell, that we can extract resources, that we can grow our enterprises so that the American ruling class, the billionaires, the owners of industry, can continue to enrich themselves. And make no mistake, this would mean the death and suffering of millions of people. Such has been the case all of human history. When resources are extracted undemocratically through overthrow and colonization, which this would be just new age colonization, right? Not the colonization of old where you go in and subjugate the people, occupy the place, and take over. This time you just control the economic resources. And that's enough. Maybe you have a couple military bases here and there. What am I? Defeat pirate captain. Okay. And so we know that the US strategy is not to work with other countries to bring forth this multipolar world, but it is to fight tooth and nail, to scratch and claw and try and hold on to this unipolar situation. A unipolar situation that is untenable. Why should you care? Why does this matter to you? One, you're a citizen of the US. You're someone who lives in the US. You're a citizen of the world. You're a human being. Things happening politically in the world impact your life inexorably. They cannot help but to impact your life. If you care to live a better life, then you care about these things happening. If the leading powers cannot work together to usher in a multipolar world, it would mean something not too far from a World War III. Because whenever great change happens in history, whenever there's a major power shift happening in history, and this doesn't take place in a peaceful manner, and rarely has it ever, millions of people die because the powers vying for control naturally do so through war and violence. And they send the poor, they send droves of people to their deaths to maintain their economic position. That is what would happen in this situation. Inevitably so. That is why you should care.
An arrangement that I believe has run its course. I know you and
I'm over
your
encumbered
crew
again.
sought to acquire the tribute
Aye.
in seasons past, but the Iron Rose has successfully deterred your efforts. This season, I would invite you to make the attempt once again, with the assurance that the Iron Rose will not be on hand.
But I can wait.
In
It's a
fact,
good moment for you.
you may find Guard Captain DuPont is very quick to surrender when you confront him on the road. In exchange for your participation and your discretion, I will share the locations of the legendary verdant gemstones that we might share in their bounty. Yours in good faith and in confidence, Francis Turner, Speaker of the Winds.
Cover the stone. Okay.
Welcome, Trin.
What's up, Trin? All right. That's pretty much I think a brief overview of what a multipolar world means, what a unipolar world is, and what that transition could mean. Let's continue down the news feed. Local GOP officials. I'm going to stay away from the more microcosmic examples of greater issues, because unless I think they are so ubiquitous in terms of how they encapsulate and this isn't just me trying to use big words, these words are just the most apt descriptions in how they encapsulate the issue, then I'll like talk about that particular thing. But short of that, I'm going to skip over the smaller stuff.
The withering comes from the very earth here. The druid's charge was to keep
Okay,
it at bay.
here's a good example. I guess we're going to stay on the multipolar topic and how the US utilizes its power to maintain its global dominance. So this headline says, and you guys can refer to the headlines to find the stories. This headline says, Venezuela moves to cancel energy agreements with Trinidad after U.S. warships arrive at island nation. So, ostensibly, on the surface, according to the administration, these warships, I like chuckle there because it's absurd on its face, right? We're not sending nuclear warships to a country like Trinidad that's smaller than some of the smallest states in America because they pose such a threat. No, obviously not. That wouldn't make any sense. What threat does Trinidad pose to us? Are they going to nuke us? No, obviously not. So it's absurd on its face. The reason we're sending warships to the region is for control. It's for control. It is to say, if you don't do what we say, we will kill you. We will create any pretext, be it that your country is bringing drugs into our country. We will find whatever pretext necessary to justify our violence against you and kill your leaders and put in people that will do our bidding. It's what has been popularly coined as U.S. regime change wars. Places we've done it before, again, to maintain our unipolar dominance over the world. Places we've done it before. Nicaragua, Laos, Japan. All of it is escaping me, but most of Latin America, some African nations, Liberia, the country that I was born in. We do it all over the place. Virtually any nation that is connected in some way such that there's a percentage of the resources, of their natural resources, that's going to American companies. And someone has attempted to change the dynamic of that relationship such that the native people of that nation have either an equal relationship or a beneficial relationship. We usually go in and kill whoever is trying to make that happen. That's our MO. Again, I'm not saying this to paint the US as the bad guy.
Welcome, Jason.
Most countries operate in this way. The reason I'm talking about the US is because, be it that we're the world power, we do it the most
Welcome, Ben Swauber.
because we can. We're at the top. And so when we're discussing these situations, it makes sense then to discuss who is doing it the best or the most, which is inevitably the US. Okay. Let's see what else we have in the news.
Welcome, Joes Ramos.
What's up, Joes?
Welcome, X Perfect Ekix. Had God Sleeps is going off.
Israel's genocide seems to be at a tenuous
Welcome,
ceasefire still. Okay, let's talk about the U.S.-Israeli relationship. Let's talk about the U.S.-Israeli relationship. And I know this is gonna piss a lot of people off. I'm sorry. I truly am. I don't say that to be condescending, because I think I understand it's incredibly emotional. It's incredibly tied to a lot of profound things for people. It's tied to their identities, their sense of self, their sense of belonging. And those things make it difficult to look at something and try to be objective. And I say try because I think there's an argument to be made about it being impossible for human beings to be objective, but we have ways of doing so. Our best tool to that end is the scientific method. And so, we don't have to be scientists to try and employ a scientific methodology in terms of our thinking. The more we do it, the easier it becomes, right? And we should always take a scientific approach to our thinking simply because it's the best tool that we have to make sense of phenomenon in the world and in this life that we live. So we should always take a scientific approach to our thinking. I think that goes without saying because it's proven to be very useful and have a great deal of utility. Okay. Rotate the glyph to restore power. Okay, Israeli-American relationship. So first I want to debunk a couple
Welcome, Drede Santiago.
talking points that we typically hear about the Israeli-American relationship. I'm going to start with the most inflammatory. There's the anti-Semitic trope of Israel being this state, it's the whole idea of like Jews being this cabal of like demonic rich folk who control the world from behind the scenes and are the marionettes of everyone around the world. There's that myth, right, of like AIPAC is just a representation of Israel doing just that. And look at how they use money in American politics to control our politicians and work against America for the sake of the Jews and the Israelis. This is not the case. What's going on then? It is the case that AIPAC exists and AIPAC is ostensibly a Jewish lobby and Israeli lobby, and to the extent that Israel is a country dominated by the Jews, sure, AIPAC is a Jewish lobby. Why does this not make true the anti-Semitic trope that Jews are running the world from behind the scenes and controlling all the countries? Because
Welcome, Jared DeVille.
the investment model of politics is not a Jewish invention. It's not a Jewish thing. It's simply the state of American politics. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's like if someone who was Jewish played football and there was a stereotype of Jews being good at football, and this person was good at football, and you were like, they're not good at football because they are savvy or they've like learned a great deal about this thing and tried really hard at it and given a ton of time and like put a lot of effort in being good at it. No, it's simply because they're Jewish. That's not the best analogy, but it kind of fits, right? There's nothing special about AIPAC. They're simply another foreign lobby. There are tons of foreign lobbies. There are tons of lobbying groups. This is and lobbying groups control special interests. Another way of talking, this isn't how this term originated. This term originated talking about working class interests, but it has contemporarily been used to describe billionaires and other wealthy groups controlling U.S. politics. AIPAC is just that. It's just another lobbying group. They just happen to be lobbying for Israel. There are other foreign PACs. The Saudis have a foreign PAC. The Argentinians, all the other nations have lobbying groups that lobby the U.S. government for their interests. The U.S. government gives tons of money to other countries. And we don't do this out of our goodwill. Again, governments do not act from an altruistic place. They act from a material interest place. All governments do. So we're not giving Israel all this money because we love Israel so much. We're not giving Israel all this money because the Jews are controlling American politicians from behind the scene and there's some dark Jewish cabal running everything. No, that's not what's going on. It's just typical lobbying, money, and politics. That's all. But some people might argue, but George, it feels like more. It feels like more. It feels like spice. It feels like more. It feels like we give way more money to Israel than anywhere else, and we treat them with a lot more favorability than anywhere else. And there's some truth to that. I wouldn't say than anywhere else. It's not like demonstrably true, but to the extent that there's some truth to it, let me explain. The reason Israel receives favorable treatment from the U.S. is because they are a strategic asset. Again, governments don't act from an altruistic place. We act out of governments act out of self-interest. Israel is a strategic asset. Some people might have heard that before and also don't understand why. Why is Israel a strategic asset to the United States? Okay, let's remember the United States exists in a unipolar world, a world in which one superpower rules the world. One superpower sets the agenda for the world. One superpower calls the shots. We are in a waning, decreasing unipolar world with the U.S. at the top. The way the U.S. does this is through what we call a soft empire. A hard empire can be thought of as, like, let's take the British Empire, for example, where you have a ton of colonies and military bases in these places, and you're occupying them and you're subjugating the people, and that's how you control them, and that's your typical sense of an empire.
Things are
A soft
pretty
empire
dire.
is the same idea, except it's not so blatant. You don't have these occupying forces that are marching through the streets and easy to spot. You don't have your people sitting at the top of their government. In a soft empire, you put in their people. The Romans did both hard empire and soft empire. So when we talk about regime change wars, this is the U.S. employing the strategy of a soft empire, where we put in people from the population that will serve our interest. And so on the surface, it looks like they are ruling themselves. We employ economically harmful policies against these countries if they don't do the things we say, to coerce them into doing our bidding. We often think of this as sanctions and tariffs, and like we hear American
Welcome, Julian PR.
presidents using this all the time. You've heard it your whole life. America has placed sanctions on this country. America has placed sanctions on that country. America has placed sanctions here, sanctions there. America increases tariffs here, tariffs there. Why? That's soft empire. That's us coercing other countries to our bidding through economic policies, through an economic strangle on their economy. What does this do? This starves the people. The country has less access to economic resources, and thus it creates a tumultuous situation in the country. The leaders are put under pressure, and then the people suffer. The people start to revolt. The leaders oftentimes use violence to put down said revolt. The U.S. used that violence against the people as a pretext to go in, overthrow the government, put in somebody that will do our bidding. This is soft empire. What does this have to do with Israel? Okay. Israel is what we call a vassal state. They are a strategic asset. A vassal state is a nation that is subservient to another nation. But I thought America was subservient to Israel. No, America is not. America, as the ruling power of the world, is not subservient to Israel. Israel is subservient to America. Okay. There are a couple ways in which Israel is a vassal state, a strategic asset, and is subservient to America. One, they create a means by which we can feed the American and military industrial complex, right? Because they're constantly in conflict and constantly need weapons, and these weapons they buy from the U.S. And people will say, we send billions of dollars to Israel. Israel is buying these weapons, and that's good for the American economy. I wish I could pull up the video right now, but look up America being the arsenal of democracy. There's a congresswoman that said this when Biden put a pause on sending weapons to Israel during the first year of Israel's genocide against the Palestinians. And this American congresswoman comes out against this pause because it meant that people who worked in the arms factories creating the weapons were out of a job, right? A great deal of America's economy hinges on the military. Our high technology companies are subsidized through the Pentagon, right? Hence our astronomically high military budget. And this is for a couple reasons. One, because the ruling economic powers in the U.S. have and receive government handouts all the time. This is simply how they do business, is through government handouts. The government subsidizes the large U.S. companies through government contracts, through various federal institutions. Okay, think all the money that Tesla has gotten in SpaceX and Amazon and every other company.
Aeternum's ruins tell the tale of a magnificent...
Similarly,
I believe you saw...
the Israeli relationship, or as it pertains to the Israeli relationship, Israel gets a ton of money for their armaments. It benefits Israel, and it also benefits U.S. companies. Moreover, it benefits the U.S. strategic position in the region because the U.S. controls the region through Israel. The U.S. can put down any force that might not do what they say, might want to start some popular working class movement that would communicate to other people, other countries in the region to democratize and start caring about the needs of their citizens, and that could spread and that threatens the U.S. interests. They use Israel to put that down. They use Israel to put down opposition within the region. So all Israel is a mercenary state for the U.S. They're doing the U.S.'s dirty work. Israel is a hired gun in the region. That's what that is. That's all. Israel is not some cabal of powerful Jews who figured out how to control the U.S. and they're running the world. Nope. Not at all. Israel is a hired gun for the U.S. That's it. They're another vassal state like all the others, guys. Okay, so we can stop with all the anti-Semitic tropes. That's the American-Israeli relationship right there for you. It's that simple. Israel does the U.S.'s bidding and creates a means by which the military-industrial complex can continue to be fed. That's it. That's all it is. Okay. Moving on from that, that's the Israeli-American relationship. What else is in these headlines? Does this want me to go over there? Yes, it wants me to go over. This isn't in a headline, but I'll discuss this briefly. There's a lot of hopelessness in American politics because oftentimes, like let's take Obama's presidency, for example. You'll remember, and some of you might be too young to remember this, but when we're discussing American politics and discussing the hopelessness that people often feel and say there's no point in voting, nothing ever changes, so what's the point? Why should you vote? This is true and not true, and I'm not just saying that as a cop out or to be like, or to do both sides. No, there's a bit of truth to both. It is the case that more often, the vast majority of the time, when politicians run on something, they don't do said thing. Look at Trump, look at Obama, to a far less extent than Trump. Obama, for all his faults, and there were many, tried to do some of the things he said he was going to do, but was rebuffed by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party because the ruling class would never allow those things to happen and because it would work against their economic interests. That's why we don't have universal health care to this day, and Americans are dying and paying the most for health care simultaneously. People often get discouraged about the American political system. Like, why should I vote? There's no point in voting. Nothing ever changes. It is true that things rarely change, but that is not to say they can't change. They can't change because things have changed. And we know this because we know American history. If you know American history at all, you know that America was a much different country.
Welcome, David Andador.
200 years ago, 150 years ago, much different country. If we look at other nations comparatively, America has undergone a great deal of change. And none of this happened by accident. It happened because a bunch of people engaged in the political process. And so it is true that a great deal of change can happen through engaging in politics. Let's take, for instance, women's suffrage. It's not a given that women got the right to vote. No, not at all. Women got the right to vote because they engaged in the political process and forced the ruling class and the government to give them the right to vote. Segregation,
Welcome, Zulu Zuki.
at least legal segregation is still prominent in the United States, but legally it isn't. No, it's no longer a thing. That got done away with because a ton of people got together and said no more. They engaged in the political process and they pulled the rungs of politics via the economic vehicles, the economic system, right? They didn't participate in the economy, and in doing so, they applied pressure to the ruling class, and they got some change. Not the change that they were looking for, not the change that they were promised, but some change nonetheless, noticeable change, which tells us change can be done. It's not ever happening in the way that is sort of promised after the huge fight, but change happens, and it's on us to continue that fight. And so we have to learn from the instances where change has taken place and say, what does this tell us about how we can create change in the current day? And what change do we want to create? And more than that, how can we make sure this change is real and that it lasts and that it permeates through the system and that it actually impacts people's lives? Let's take the civil rights movement, for example. They won, but their victory was very surface level, right? Segregation still exists. Black people are still murdered by the cops every day. There's still a ton of racism, but we can't say it's the same situation as it was before. So there has been change, but it hasn't been the change that was promised, nor exactly the change that they were fighting for. Still progress. Not enough progress, not even close, but progress. And so then one should learn from that and say, we need to continue fighting. We need to apply more pressure, not get discouraged and say, oh, we didn't get the change that we want, and so why do we keep trying? Well, we got some change, so we should try even harder. I think that's the lesson that we should take from American politics and from the change that's happened in the short history of America as a country as compared to other nations, is that change is possible. You're going to have to fight tooth and nail to get it because the ruling elites will not give it to you because it's against their interest to do so. They would rather hoard their wealth and see you starved with their boot on your neck as long as they can be rich and fly in their private jets. But that doesn't have to be the case. We can fight to change that. We can fight to change that. So it does make sense to engage in the political process. It does make sense to pay attention. It does make sense to participate. That is not to say you should engage in it as it is, because obviously it's not perfect. Obviously it needs to change. And so you should be thinking about how you want to change it and what parts of it you're not going to buy into. I think a part of it that I often get frustrated with is that people like let's take Obama for example. People thought he was going to be the change in American politics. Yes, we can, right? We can, solve all the ills of America and change the world and make America a perfect country. Obviously that didn't happen, right? Obama was not the Messiah. Well, no Messiah is coming. No one individual or no one coalition or campaign is going to make all right with the country. That's not going to happen. It's a constant fight. It's a constant fight. And once you've gotten a candidate in there, that's when the fight begins. That's not when it ends. That's when it begins. I think that's what we have to remember, and that's what we can take away from these movements is that once they say they're going to listen to you, that's when the fight begins. That's not when it ends. Once they allowed Martin Luther King to give his I Have a Dream speech at the White House, that's when the fight began. And I know you're going to say, George, that's not what the fight, like they were fighting for 10 years before that. I know. And they got to the door after those 10 years. That's when the fight really started. That's when they got to the starting line. Right? But people only have so much stamina. And this is what I mean by part of the fight is at the individual level. The great majority of it is at a societal collective level, but part of the fight is at the individual level, where within yourself, you have to cultivate the capacity to go the distance. You have to cultivate courage. You have to cultivate compassion, cultivate curiosity, cultivate candor to do what it takes to go the distance, because they're not going to let up easy. They're going to tire you out. It's a battle of attrition. We have to build communal resources like they did during the civil rights movement, where when they could no longer participate in the economic system at large, they leaned on each other for resources. And so these are the lessons that we can learn from these people's struggle, from the struggle that they struggled, so we can all have a better America. I think the civil rights movement oftentimes gets framed as this like black issue. It's an American issue. America is a promise unfulfilled. The women's suffrage movement, the civil rights movement, emancipation, all of this got America closer to the promise. It's an American thing. It's not some one group issue. Women's suffrage made America more America. If it didn't happen, America would be less America, which is to say it would less fulfill the promise of liberty and justice for all. Every single person in the borders of the US who remotely considers themselves American should celebrate these things and be fighting for it. It's not a black issue. It's not a women's issue. It's not an immigrant issue. It's an American issue. It's an American issue. The more America, the more free America gets, which is to say, the more people in the country have access to all the things that allow for a dignified life, not just particular groups of people, the more America becomes America, the closer we get to liberty and justice for all. Everyone should be fighting for that. That is your duty as a person in the borders of this country. That is your moral imperative. To not do that is to be un-American, is to fight against the very ideals and principles that this nation was founded on. Yes, we've never lived up to that. That is the fight, to ensure that we live up to that, to ensure that we make true the promise. So, back to my point, we don't see politics and say, no change ever happens. We're like, what's the point in engaging with it? We look at it and we say, the change that we want hasn't completely happened yet. And so we're going to learn from how people have made change in the past to continue to fight and make the change happen that we want to see. That is the takeaway we should have from the state of American politics. And it doesn't have to require all of you, right? If you don't have the capacity to do X, Y, and Z, do what you can do. Do what you can do. And while you're doing that, cultivate greater capacity to be able to do more, because we need you. We need everyone in the fight. We need everyone to make true the promise of liberty and justice for all. We're not there yet, but by hook or by crook, we're going to get there if we all keep trying. Do it for all the millions of people that lived as peasants and serfs in early America. Do it for all the millions of people that were enslaved in early America. Do it for all the women who lived under unreal repression in early America. Do it for all the people that worked tooth and nail but never got to enjoy the spoils. Do it for you who are currently working tooth and nail but not getting to live the promise of liberty and justice for all. Do it for you who are living the promise of liberty and justice, but you don't see it happening for all. Do it for that. It's worthwhile. It's worth it. That is our duty. That is what we've inherited, and we can't falter. We can't not do our part. We can't be complacent and say, oh, well, it's hopeless. Say, oh, well, what's the point? Say, oh, like, it's too hard. Yeah, it's hard. Tough. It's hard, and we're going to do it. That's the American spirit. We do hard things. It's really easy to say America is perfect the way it is and nothing should change. It's really easy to say that. It's really complacent to say that. It's really easy to shy away from criticizing something you love and care about. It's really easy. It's really complacent. It's weak. It's un-American. And we shouldn't do it. We should fight tooth and nail to make true the promise of liberty and justice for all. Not for some, not for the rich, not for the well-connected.
Welcome, Daniel.
For all. That's how I feel we should look at politics. Yes, it's a cesspool. That doesn't mean we should give up. That means we should work all the harder. All right, chat. I'm going to call it there. I've just been running around in New World. But this world looks beautiful, man. I love the way it looks. Okay. We discovered some place. We did a couple missions. GG's. Hopefully my videos allow me to edit. We'll find out. Yo, Zulu, drop a follow. Come back next time. If you enjoy the content, check out our page. I posted a couple political things, not as much as I would like, but I got some gaming footage on there as well. Check those out. Drop a follow. Come back next time. Hope to see you in the next stream. GG's, chat.